بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وبعد. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, if you're anything like me, then typically, especially in this last year, we've been coming here with heavy hearts, burdened with the times that we're living in. We find ourselves in a moment of collective fatigue and uncertainty. We've watched a full year pass in Gaza, witnessing unimaginable suffering, loss, and destruction, without any real signs of peace or relief for our brothers and sisters on the horizon. The images and the stories are absolutely haunting. And the reality of an ongoing, expanding war without even a prospect of ceasefire can fill us with feelings of helplessness, anger, and profound sadness. And then at the same time, here at home, we face an emotionally charged and polarizing election season. The issues that divide us, even among the Muslim community, let alone the nation as an entirety, the issues, the rhetoric that we hear, the anxieties we carry about the future of this country, and of course, by extension, the world, all of this can leave us feeling fractured and unsettled. It's no doubt it's a very difficult time. And each of us are going to feel the strain and weight of those difficulties in our own way. And it's in these moments that the very natural reaction, the very natural feelings that we have, we can be overwhelmed, often wondering if relief or even clarity will ever come. And so to address those feelings, I want to talk to you about the importance of hope, which is an inner quality that has the power to uplift our spirit and sustain us, especially in times of difficulty and uncertainty. Hope, when paired with faith, paired with iman, can give us strength when we feel tested and can keep us on the path of righteousness when the way forward seems unclear. Islam encourages us to keep hope alive. It encourages us to remain hopeful even in the direst of situations, especially during challenging times. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us of this in the Quran. He says, وَمَنْ يَقْنَطُ مِنْ رَحْمَةِ رَبِّهِ إِلَّا الضَّالُّونَ. It says, only those who despair in the mercy of their Lord, they are astray. That when you give up, when you lose hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy, it's a sign that you are heading in the wrong direction. This verse in Surah Al-Hijr, that's chapter 14, verse number 56, teaches us that losing hope in Allah's mercy is a sign of misguidance. Hope in Allah's mercy and His divine wisdom is not mere optimism, but it's rooted in faith, in what we call tawakkul, which is trust, reliance upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not a false sense of optimism or a false hope, but it is very real, backed by the divine. In our faith, hope, often in the Arabic language known as raja, it's not just being optimistic, but it's a deeply transformative spiritual state that stems from unwavering faith in Allah's mercy, in His wisdom, and His ultimate plan. Many of the great scholars of our spiritual tradition have noted that hope is a light in the heart. It acts as an anchor for the soul. One of the great Imams, Al-Harawi, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said that that hope is like a key which opens the door to divine secrets, motivating the seeker to remain steadfast on their journey, even when they're faced with tremendous trials and spiritual lows. And there's a direct correlation between having hope and tawakkul. The more trust that we have in Allah, the greater our hope will be and the less likely we are to surrender to anxiety and despair. Al-Harawi is the great Shaykh al-Islam, by the way. Some of you know him as one of the great Persian scholars of spirituality in Islam. He considered tawakkul to be a fundamental station for the person of faith, describing tawakkul as emptying one's heart of worldly reliance, which I feel like we've reached that moment, maybe not by choice, but by embracing the reality where we can no longer expect relief from the actors in this world. We have to replace that with something, which is to fill our heart with Allah's presence. Al-Harawi taught us that the one who truly relies on Allah experiences a heart free from anxiety, secure in the knowledge that everything unfolds according to Allah's divine plan. One of the great Imams, Al-Ghazali, also notes that tawakkul is a purification of the heart from fear of anything besides Allah. So you remove anxiety and fear from your hearts, and this is what creates that unsettling emotional state. He teaches that the person who achieves true tawakkul reaches a state of spiritual freedom. They're liberated. They have no fear of loss of worldly issues or concerns, knowing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in full control. So hope based on profound trust in Allah is the bridge that helps us cross the valleys of hardship, allowing us to continue our journey toward what is right and what is just. And there's a great moment in the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ that highlights, that showcases this hope based on profound trust in Allah. Demonstrates these qualities. Many of you are familiar with the story. The Prophet ﷺ and his closest companion Abu Bakr as-Siddiq seeking refuge in the cave of Thawr. As you know, this took place during their migration, during the hijrah from Mecca to Al-Madinah. This was a journey the Prophet ﷺ faced great difficulty in concluding. You know, the Quraysh, they were furious about the Prophet's message, and they were extremely worried and concerned about his growing influence in the region. And so, exhausting all means to stop him from continuing his mission, they came to the conclusion that the only way to end Islam was to kill the Prophet ﷺ. And so they spared no effort in attempting to assassinate him, putting a price on his head, essentially hiring bounty hunters and assassins to seek out the Prophet ﷺ and to deliver him to them dead or alive. And so the Prophet ﷺ and his companion Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, they left Mecca, and they had to do so in secrecy. They had to make an elaborate plan to escape their own city as if they were prisoners being held in their homes, awaiting an execution. And along that journey, they had to take shelter, hiding in a cave. And they stood there in that cave for 3 days as the bounty hunters and the assassins of the Quraysh attempted to track them down. You have to think about this for a moment. The cave, this confinement, this is the feeling that often we have, and there seems to be no way out. The Prophet ﷺ is there. Imagine the tension that's building with his companion Abu Bakr as-Siddiq as the enemies, they draw closer and closer to the point that Abu Bakr could see their feet outside of that cave. And he feared for the Prophet's safety. And he said, if they were just to look down, if they just look down, they're going to see us. It'll be over. It was a critical moment. But the Prophet ﷺ reassured Abu Bakr as-Siddiq with the profound words we find in the Quran, Surah At-Tawbah, verse number 9, chapter number 9, verse number 40, when Allah recounts this, the Prophet ﷺ saying, "La tahzan, inna Allah ma'ana." Do not grieve, for indeed Allah is with us. Very few words, an extremely powerful statement. It captures the essence of hope and reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. La tahzan. Do not grieve. Do not give in to despair. Meaning, be hopeful. Why? Because Allah is with us. It's trust. It's tawakkul. Here they're seemingly trapped. There's no visible escape. The cave, there's only one way out, and that's the feet of the enemy. The assassins, they're standing right there about to discover them. And in this situation of immense anxiety, tension, fear, the Prophet ﷺ remained calm and filled with hope, confident in Allah's protection. For Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, the anxiety, it was not for himself. You can see the way he was behaving in the cave. The Prophet ﷺ, they're tired. Abu Bakr offered him to lie on his lap so that he could get rest. And he noticed the holes in the cave, and he plugged those holes with his feet, getting stung. He wasn't worried about himself. He was worried about the Prophet ﷺ. He knew the Prophet's significance to the Ummah, to the message of Islam, and of course, his needed presence to complete the mission. Abu Bakr's fear and protectiveness are natural emotions in such circumstances. When we feel trapped as individuals, whether that's physically or emotionally, it's common to feel a sense of helplessness. It's common to feel like the only thing to do is to give up. But the Prophet's words reminded him, as they remind all of us, that Allah is always near, especially in moments that seem impossible. The Prophet ﷺ didn't allow fear to overshadow his faith. He knew that Allah was the best of protectors. Brothers and sisters, this scene of the Prophet ﷺ and his companion Abu Bakr as-Siddiq in the cave, stuck, trapped there, resonates with us deeply in our own lives because we too experience similar feelings. We feel trapped at times, whether it's by our circumstances, whether that's financial hardship, emotional struggles, societal pressures, or otherwise. It can feel as though there's no escape. It's as if all the solutions to our problems have been concealed. They're hidden from us, and the weight of worry feels overwhelming. It's in these moments that the heart can become consumed with anxiety, to the point that we can become paralyzed. And we may wonder if there's anyone out there that actually understands what it is that we're going through, or if relief will ever come. And so the Prophet's words, do not grieve, indeed Allah is with us, la tahzan inna Allah ma'ana. They are a reminder that even when we cannot see the path forward, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is fully aware of our situation. Just as He shielded the Prophet ﷺ and Abu Bakr as-Siddiq in that cave, shielding them from those would-be assassins, He's fully capable of protecting and guiding us out of our own difficulties. This story tells us that Allah can create a way out even from what appears to be total and complete confinement, what appears to be total trap situation. And just as He used the tiny acts of nature in some reports of the story, a spider web, to cover that hole so that the assassins would be fooled into thinking that no one had entered into the cave, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can do something similar for us using the most seemingly insignificant means. And this part of the story should serve as a great lesson to us when it comes to surrendering the outcome to Allah and putting trust in His divine plan, that we should never discount the little things. Never discount the little things. The quiet moment of prayer. The very short but powerful dua that you make. The act of kindness and charity. Sharing advice or a brief moment of counsel. Small things. We should never underestimate the small things. When you discount the little things like this, it's a sign that you're too wrapped up in your own abilities or the abilities of others and desire to control the way things unfold. Discounting the little things You believe something major has to happen. You have to exert some type of effort, or leverage has to be utilized in a way that would move the world. We can see this story highlights how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can change the outcome in the most insignificant of means. We should never feel trapped or paralyzed by anxiety to the point that we even give up on these little things. Brothers and sisters, when feeling trapped, hope allows us to redirect our focus. Instead of becoming preoccupied with the seemingly impossible barriers around us, we're reminded that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has control over all things. The Prophet ﷺ and Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, they couldn't see what was coming. They didn't know the outcome of their journey, but they placed their trust in Allah's wisdom. They took the necessary means needed to arrive safely, and they put their trust in Allah. Their hope was an active form of faith. It wasn't a passive expectation that something would just happen, but it was combined with their reliance on Allah, the necessary action, as I mentioned, as well as very potent prayers for success. For us, hope should encourage us to take steps forward, even if we don't see the full path ahead. Hope is what pushes us to continue seeking solutions, making dua, and remembering that Allah is close. The Prophet's reassurance to Abu Bakr as-Siddiq in the cave teaches us that even the most difficult times, we are never alone. And our hardships are within Allah's knowledge and His divine plan. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين من كل ذنب فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. بسم الله والحمد لله حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه كما يحب ربنا ويرضاه ونصلي ونسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. Before we continue, brothers, if you could please move up and fill in the spaces. Please take a moment to fill in the spaces. There's plenty of space inside here. We have our brothers still coming in. The sisters should also be mindful of the space. And as a reminder, I've received multiple requests over the past several weeks to maintain the noise, manage the noise. One of the etiquettes of the Jummah prayer is to be silent. And unfortunately, the requests are coming from the ladies' side. It's disruptive at times, especially if you've brought young children with you. You have to manage those children. So if we look at this topic further of feeling trapped and helpless, from a psychological perspective, feeling trapped can be deeply distressing. When we feel there's no escape from our situation, we experience a heightened sense of helplessness. And this can lead to anxiety, frustration, and sometimes even depression. The feeling of being stuck, and this is a feeling that I've had personally, the situation abroad, it can diminish our sense of agency, and it can make it hard to see a way forward. It's in these moments that hope can become a psychological tool to help loosen the feeling of being stuck. In psychology, hope is understood as a motivational process that allows us to envision a positive outcome and strive to achieve it. And when paired with faith, hope becomes not just an abstract belief in a better outcome, but it becomes grounded in the trust that we have in Allah's wisdom and mercy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reassures us of this in the Quran when He says, فَإِنَّ مَعَ الْأُسْرِ يُسْرًا. Verse very well known to many of us, for indeed with hardship comes ease. This is a promise from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a reminder that hardship is always accompanied by ease, even if we cannot see it immediately unfolding in front of us. And this is the essence of tawakkul. Knowing that the hardship that we're going through, no matter how difficult it may be, ease is around the corner. And so we are not to give up, trusting that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open the doors when the time is right. And as an active participant in the process of hope, again, we have to truly understand the nature of this. You can't sit back, but you have to be engaged in the process of hope. There are a number of faith-based emotional tools that you can utilize in order to overcome these feelings of being trapped. The first of those is acceptance and patience. Acceptance here doesn't mean resignation. Meaning I accept what's happening doesn't mean I resign myself to it. When you accept something, according to psychologists, emphasizing this acceptance, they say one's current situation, when it is accepted, it can reduce emotional resistance, making it easier to approach challenges with a clear mind. You're not fighting against the decree of Allah, but you're embracing that so you can address it in a focused way. In Islam, patience is a core virtue that involves restraint, hope, and acceptance. One of the great Imams, Ibn al-Jawzi, he writes in his book, Sayyid al-Khatir, he says that patience, if it is perfected, it becomes a source of joy. Going through this process, showing us that accepting Allah's decree with hope and patience can transform our suffering into a source of inner strength. Acceptance and patience is what grounds us, allowing us to approach our struggles from a place of stability rather than from a place of panic. The second tool is reframing your perspective or shifting your perspective. This is a cognitive act of reframing, seeing things in a different way. And this is a very powerful tool that allows us to change how we perceive the situation that we're in. And our faith gives us a lens for that reframing. Instead of seeing hardship as solely a negative thing to be experienced, Islam encourages us to view challenges as opportunities for growth and spiritual elevation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this in the Quran when He says, وَعَسَى أَن تَكْرَهُ شَيْئًا وَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ وَعَسَى أَن تُحِبُّوا شَيْئًا وَهُوَ شَرٌّ لَكُمْ وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ وَأَنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Surah Al-Baqarah, this is verse number 216, what reads, perhaps you dislike something which is good for you, and you like or covet something which is bad for you. Allah knows while you do not know. This verse, in the context of Revelation, is referring to mankind's disdain for taking up arms and having to fight for your beliefs. But it also, in a general sense, serves as a principle for perspective shift. The early Muslims, they had to go out onto the battlefield. And like the vast majority of us, the idea of having to fight in combat is something that is off-putting. It's about our perspective. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tried to shift their perspective when it came to this divine command. Imam al-Ghazali taught that the trials that we face are often blessings in disguise, designed to purify the heart and strengthen our reliance in Allah. So by shifting our focus from immediate discomfort to potential long-term benefit, we can gain resilience, knowing that Allah's wisdom is at work even when we cannot understand it. And this is something that I've hinted at in the past. An example of being willing to take one step back in order to take 2 steps forward, even if it will cause us some initial discomfort. The last that I'll leave you with is faith-driven problem solving. When someone feels trapped, stress and anxiety can limit their problem-solving abilities. Again, you can become paralyzed by fear, or you don't know what to do or how to approach a problem. But hope which is anchored in faith, can reinvigorate our capacity to find solutions, or it can help us reevaluate our current approach. By placing our trust in Allah and actively seeking solutions, we can maintain a balance between reliance on Allah and proactive problem solving. Brothers and sisters, in times of feeling trapped, hope and faith, they are a transformative force. Faith reassures us, and hope motivates us to keep moving forward. Through trust in Allah, patience, perspective, and support from the divine, we find light even in the darkest of times. Hardships are a part of life. There's no doubt about it. But faith reminds us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the best of planners, and He is the one that opens the doors. So we ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to enlighten our hearts with hope and anchor our souls with His trust. We ask that He guide our footsteps as we actively pursue our goals in this life and diligently journey to Him in the home of the hereafter. We ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala relieve our brothers and sisters who are suffering, relieve them of their burdens, relieve those who are suffering around the world from injustice and oppression. And we also ask that He pardon and reward and elevate the rank of one of our uncles, Zeki, one of our brothers here today. His father passed away and has been buried today in his home country of Turkey. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala pardon him and elevate his status, and may He grant him, his family, patience and a blessed bereavement. اللهم يسر ولا تعسر وتمم بالخير وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وآخر دعوانا